So last summer I made a horror short with not much gear, a woods, my brother and no money. In between two national lockdowns. The film is called The Forest Has Us and you can watch it on my channel now. It's easy to be put off making your own shorts when you don't have much kit or people to help you. Ideally we'd all want massive budgets with the most amazing crew and cameras, but when you don't have all that, I think you just need to focus on doing the best with what you do have. My brother does actually run a lot in real life, and we lived near a cool wood that I thought would be ideal for a horror film, and the rest just kind of grew from there. As I didn't have a fixed idea for the plot, I came up with a lot of the story just by going on walks around where I planned to film. My thought process going kinda like this. This hill looks interesting. It'd be really creepy if someone was stood watching over there. That's a cool tree trunk. I wonder what weird thing could be inside. I need the guy to get injured. Maybe he could try jumping on that precarious rotting log. Some preparation and creative problem solving can go a long way. I wanted to keep the narrative nice and simple, but having one character alone in this vast environment, you get to react to everything as he does, hopefully making for quite an immersive experience. As there are no other characters for him to bounce off, I had to use other elements to progress the story and build suspense. His headphones, watch, and the woods itself. From a practical standpoint, this is fairly easy to do, as it's just someone reacting to things. And it's not complicated to add some distant footsteps or headphone interference. Plus, on a side note, if you're working with people who aren't usually actors, I find you can get away with more if they're predominantly making puzzled faces rather than going through pages of dialogue. When it came to creating suspense, I tried to tease the audience by giving them little hints something was wrong and then slowly building on it. Just something as simple as hearing a twig snap, but not knowing where it came from, is often more eerie than seeing what caused it. It's the unknown that's scary, which is why I didn't show the duplicates in their entirety until beyond the halfway point, as it's far more unsettling just catching glimpses of them. A commonly used narrative trope is to give the audience information that the protagonist is ignorant of. For instance, in this scene, where we hear the warning message through the headphones.
They look like you, but they're not. Don't let them get too close. The forest will try to trick you.
This tells the audience about the impending danger while keeping the runner completely oblivious to the trouble he's in. It's a great technique to add to the tension without having to influence the protagonist's actions or shoot anything too complicated. I was fortunate enough to borrow a drone for an afternoon to get some sweet aerial shots. This was definitely a nice to have rather than being essential to the making of a film, but you can't beat it in terms of showing the scale of a location or when you want to make a character look small and isolated. A particular camera shot frequently used in horrors and thrillers is the POV. It is often used to depict a viewpoint from a potential threat, and is a very effective method to evoke that ominous sense of being watched. No big scary monster required, just a handheld camera shot from distance. Something that can get neglected in other shorts I've seen, that can make a world of difference when done properly, is good sound. It's easy to get caught up on the camera side of things, focusing on blocking and angles, but even if it looks great, if the audio is no good, audiences will not tolerate it. Let's take this shot for example. So this is the camera's exceptionally poor onboard audio. Now this is the same shot with the sound re-recorded for it. See how decent sound can completely change a shot? Now as we made this short rather run and gun, I ended up re-recording about 95% of the sound. Don't get me wrong, this is an incredibly time-consuming process, and the majority of the editing time was spent on the sound. But I think it's so worth it, just for the amount of control it gives you. If you want the footsteps to be quieter and the breathing to be louder, you're not bound by what you recorded on the day. And unlike with filming, the sound doesn't have to match the thing on screen, so you can have some fun with it. Even if I did have a dedicated sound person on shoot, I'd still likely end up re-recording a lot of the audio, just to try and create the mood I'm after. Now, I'm certainly no visual effects artist, but I do have a better understanding than when I made this scene at 13. Believe it or not, that wasn't actually a real fighter jet. I think just having a fundamental understanding of visual effects will allow you to try out a range of useful stuff, like knowing how to mask a shot into different sections and layer it on top of itself. Which was how the cloning effect was achieved. It was just a case of setting the camera up in a fixed position and filming both parts. I then simply duplicated the clip and masked out both halves in After Effects. It doesn't require loads of technical know-how and gives you a cool result. You can of course play with this method and apply it to different angles and shots. Here was quite an extreme example where I split the shot into 6. Or this one, where Dan had to move way into the background to play the duplicate. Keep an eye on positioning. If they overlap, it gets trickier, as you'll have to mask out each individual movement and keyframe it. This can help sell the effect and be done deliberately, but will just take longer. A nice way to finish the shot off is to add some camera shake. Or you could try a slow zoom by scaling the clip slightly. Of course, this is only if you feel it's appropriate for the scene, so there's no right or wrong way, but I feel some movement can make it feel less like a visual effects shot. I used a similar method here to create this freaky shot of Dan being consumed by a tree. Not exactly the most uplifting ending, I know, but it is a horror film. Same method to shoot it, I just locked off the camera and got him to stick his limbs out in various directions and do a weird twitching motion, which was at the very least rather funny to film. Now maybe twitch the ankle if you can. Again, I then just masked out the different sections and layered them on top of one another. I experimented more with his right leg by taking a freeze frame. This was so I could raise it higher and make it seem like it had set to wood. The rest is essentially window dressing. Some subtle vein effects on the arm and a still image of Dan's face warped and blended into the tree. For the red bloodshot eyes, I just found some royalty-free images, masked up the red bits and lined them up to Dan's eyes, making sure to tweak some settings so they fitted well. Then I just tracked any movement using keyframes so they stayed in position. I know there's tracking methods out there to save time, but for shots like this where there's fairly little movement, you can get away with just keyframing. But don't worry if you're not massively comfortable with visual effects. They're a great skill to have and there's still loads more I'd like to learn, but they're certainly not essential to tell a good story. So I hope this was a useful overview on what my process was for this short. I think horror is a fantastic genre for practicing filmmaking. Just because it relies so heavily on visuals and sounds, it's ideal to experiment within. If in doubt, I think just focus on doing the simple things as well as you can, and don't be afraid to do your maddest ideas. I mean, this literally was a short about a guy being chased by himself and then turning into a tree. There are no rules.